Well, hello everybody and welcome to my show. My name is Jason DaCosta and this is Consistent Preterism. Thank you for joining me. You know, that little opening tagline there is pretty easy to remember. I always wonder if I'll ever forget it, but it flows off the tongue like Dr. Don K. Preston's morning musing intro, where he says, "My name is Don K. Preston and I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma." And so, I was just taking note of that it just never seems to fail. Anyways, I wanted to address a question that I got via email from a viewer. And this viewer chooses to remain anonymous. He says, "Hi, Jason, quick question. Is the salvation of the gospel just about escaping the perishing or destruction of AD 70? If so, then how about all the saints that died equally horrendous deaths before AD 70? Death by stoning, lions, burning, etc. Could this be all to the salvation that had been promised since the Garden of Eden? Seems like a big anticlimax, wouldn't you agree? Thanks for your response." So a very good question. One that I think a lot of preterists struggle with. And I struggled with it too, because you go back and forth. Like, part of you wants to say, oh, well, obviously this salvation had to do with only, the destruction of Jerusalem and the end of the age and the destruction of the temple and the horrendous situation that would befall these people in the end, right? That's really all salvation had to do with. But as I've added to the view and studied the Bible and been able to put together my view, you all know that that's not how I see it. I see it a few different ways, right? Now, there was a salvation in the New Testament that was used kind of as an overarching type theme. And then within that theme, you have different types of salvation. Like I had mentioned recently, they were in this already but not yet sort of period, that being the last days. And they were, you hear the statement used a lot, they were already saved in a sense. They were being saved from that wicked and perverse generation who was persecuting them, that being the Jews. And they were going to be saved at the final coming of the Lord, which was for his saints, says the New Testament, to take them away. So salvation is kind of a complex concept in the New Testament, and there's a lot of debate over it. I see salvation in the New Testament as most importantly as being in the spiritual realm. Most importantly, I see that the salvation, the final judgment, was going to take place in the spiritual realm. And like this guy said, what about everybody who died before then, right? It can't just be salvation for the batch of individuals who were left at the time of the destruction, right? That can't just be what the salvation's about, right? There were dead ones that were also involved in this salvation. And just to kind of break that down a little bit more, we remember that Paul spoke of the coming of the Lord for his saints to transform them into angels of light and take them up into the clouds where they would forever be with him. But Paul didn't just say that about the ones who were going to be alive and remain until the coming. Paul also said that the dead ones would participate in this salvific end times event. So it has to include the living and the dead being all those who died up until the coming, and the living being those who were alive at the coming. Now, it's obviously it obviously spans back generations, right? It obviously spans back far back, according to the story, right? And we can see that because places like Hebrews, I believe it is, says that, Abraham had looked forward to this day or this resurrection, or your fathers had, longed to see it. And here you are, you're going to see it. It was Paul who said that the 12 tribes served God earnestly day and night, hoping to attain to the resurrection. So there was this concept in their belief system that they were going to be raised at the end. And there was going to be this Messiah that would come and usher them into this golden age, this age of peace and everything. And that was, I guess, believed by a lot of these people. And so, that's what we see, right? So the question is from this gentleman, let me go back to it here. How about all the saints that died horrendous deaths before AD 70? Yes, I believe that this salvation is obviously tied back to the start of the story. What was it? Revelation talks about, Abel's blood crying out, and how long before they would be, how much longer before they would be redeemed, or they would be, vengeance would be, avenged, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. And it says they were told to wait a little while longer, right? So that tells me that the salvation, the vengeance, everything that was going on at the end was tied to the garden story. It was tied to way back with Cain and Abel, right? So it's got to be inclusive of the faithful, right? It wasn't to the seed through the law, it was to the seed through faith. But yeah, so I think that it goes all the way back. I think that it's sort of the salvation in the spiritual realm, and not only the spiritual realm, but there was also obviously an essence of salvation at the end too, when he came for them and changed them and whisked them away into their new kingdom, right? So it was sort of a twofold salvation, in my opinion. There was a earthly sense for those who were involved at the end, and of course there was a spiritual sense where the dead would be raised. It has to be spiritual, right? If the dead were raised, then it has to be spiritual, right? And they would stand before the throne, and the books would be open, and they would judge each one according to his works. I mean, look, there's a lot of, metaphorical imagery used in the Old Testament. I'll grant that. And a lot of times in the Old Testament, we hear the prophets talking about resurrection and using that term and that concept to speak of Israel as a covenant whole coming back, physically coming back to their land. And so I recognize and I admit that resurrection language could certainly mean in the Old Testament, and did certainly mean in the Old Testament, to speak about physical realities about Israel, whether they were being, brought back to the land and being portrayed as resurrected and dead bones coming back to life, stuff like that. So that is in there. But I think the difference with the New Testament is that we have all of this clear language and clear expectations given and clear warnings that there was going to be something radically different about this final moment. And because it was the final moment in history, in Israel's history, then it makes it even more likely that it was radical and supernatural above all that came before it. This was the end, right? They were in the last days. And so something has to be said for that, because they were expecting something very, very unique and very, very different to occur. And that was the coming of the Savior for them, to bring them into their new kingdom. It was Hebrews that says he will come a second time apart from sin for salvation. For salvation. So he was coming for their salvation. So I think that the salvation was collectively relevant to the dead ones and the living ones at his coming. I think that the story, even though it's probably not true because it's supernatural and super spiritual and all that, but I think that the story wants the reader to imagine some sort of a spiritual scenario there at the end. Some sort of, heavenly judgment before they can enter into their promise. Some sort of separating from the sheep and the goats, right? And so that's pretty much it. That's how I would answer that question. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. If you enjoyed it, give it a like, a Rooski, and we'll catch you on another episode. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.